Talk Shoes. Recorded live.
Welcome to the PipeIQ Weekly AI Podcast, where we cover all the topics related to AI business acceleration. We're in the heart of Silicon Valley here at PipeIQ headquarters in Palo Alto, California. This is podcast number 1. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today I have my co-host Rajesh Kadam. It's Sunday, October 6, 2024. It's a beautiful day here, Rajesh, and sunny day in Palo Alto where we have a heat wave. It's 107 degrees, but it's expected to cool off tomorrow. What do you think about this heat wave?
Hey, actually, I know most people don't like such heat, but I'm originally from India. I've been in the US like 24 years now, but I don't mind the heat. I prefer heat rather than cold days. I'm getting the ones coming up in December, but this is all right, actually. I enjoy it as much as I can when I'm not in front of the computer, but I believe it's going to cool off in the next couple of days, which I guess is good relief.
Well, let me tell you, there's a lot going on in AI today, especially around marketing automation, and we're going to cover that in today's podcast. We'll do a little bit of news. There's a lot of news going on around AI, so we'll give you a little brief around that. We'll talk a little bit about the OpenAI close. They got some funding, and so we'll talk a bit about that and what's happening with Apple around there. Some revenue targets for everybody, and we'll get some news out of the way. Then we're going to talk about the industry. There's been a lot going on around what's happening around AI and automation. There's Google has done Notebook LM, if you guys haven't heard about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Then as we progress through the agenda here, which will be 60 minutes, we will talk a little bit about PipeIQ and what PipeIQ is doing around marketing functions and marketing automation. Talk a little bit with Rajesh about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming up next week, as well as what keeps you up at night and what gets you excited. So that's going to be the show for today. So I'm excited about that. So let's talk a little bit about the news. So Rajesh, OpenAI, they made the news last week around the dollars they raised. What's the story there?
Yeah, they raised $6.6 billion, and I believe it was led by Thrive Capital, and with participation from SoftBank and others. SoftBank put in $500 million. Thrive, I don't know the exact number. It's probably obviously a big part of that $6.6 billion check. Thrive also has the right to invest another $1 billion a year from now, I believe, at the same terms that they're getting today. So, there's some optionality for them on the upside. So it's a big deal, right? We know that they're about, I believe they're at about a 5.5 billion run rate right now, and Anthropic is at about $1 billion. And Anthropic is getting a lot of its revenue from API, via the API access, I believe, while OpenAI is mostly ChatGPT subscriptions. So
it seems like right now that even though they're getting these revenue run rates, they're investing a ton of money, right?
Yes.
All the big cloud vendors, if you talk about Google, Microsoft, and everybody, there's like $1 trillion going into, the investment around AI, right? And if you look at how much is actually coming, how much revenue is coming out, it's like a fraction of that. But it seems like it's kind of a run to see who gets there first, who gets the models, and who wins the battle. So now if you're a pick and shovel manufacturer, right, and you're building technology for AI, this is a great boon for everybody because there's $1 trillion being spent to build the technology, right? And so there is a big boom, but the big boom for customers isn't quite yet, right? It's going to take a little time for those products that are being invested, like PipeIQ, to where they're actually now, generating the returns that customers would expect to validate this kind of market capitalization, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I 100% agree with you, right? I think in the Gartner hype cycle, a lot of CTOs tell me, folks that I've spoken to, about how they believe that we are not yet in the trough of disillusionment, right? So somewhere we are right in between the peak in the trough. So I do expect that there's going to be some skepticism over the next maybe several months around, hey, is ROI, what's the ROI on our AI spend, how are we doing, etc. Right? So but then it'll pick back up. Is kind of my belief.
And as we'll get into when we talk about the industry topics that are happening,
it
is amazing when you see some of this stuff come out, what it actually can do, right? So
Right.
I'm actually really I think that what I'm seeing, like 10% of what's coming out and what PipeIQ is doing, I'm actually super impressed by when you actually see it. I actually couldn't believe some of the stuff, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But the other thing I said, what happened to Apple?
Apple decided not to invest in this particular round, even though they've announced a partnership and they're using ChatGPT as part of Apple Siri and so on. Apple Intelligence, I guess what they're calling it, but they decided not to invest. So it's kind of that's an interesting angle and story. So I wonder what Apple's thinking around it. But
everybody. The weird thing is, like, the FANG groups, Broadcom, who makes AI chips, right, slipped into the top 7 FANG groups because revenue from AI chips is so there's just a lot of financial impact from a lot of different companies that are showing up, either selling picks and shovels or investing in gold digging operations. I like to pull it back to California and the gold rush, right? Because I feel like that's actually what's happening along the way.
Absolutely. I think I don't know how many skeptics are out there on AI yet, but definitely we are seeing some crazy stuff coming out, of these models and what they're capable of doing, right? So I see tremendous spending here over the next 8 to 10 years, and hyperscalers obviously see it already. Mark Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai and others, right? So there's certainly a lot of that stuff going on. So picks and shovels is definitely a good one to be doing at this time.
Well, and I gotta say, Mark Zuckerberg's just blocks away here in Palo Alto, and so is Silicon Valley and Palo Alto is getting a resurgence of this kind of money coming in and being spent, whether it's being Apple stepping out or others that are just stepping in. It is like, you see technology cycles, and this is certainly one of them.
Yes. I think many people, I guess, are
Google
betting
too, down the street. You got Google, right?
Google, a couple of exits from here. Google in Mountain View, right? I definitely think this is a wave that's probably big or as big as the internet, perhaps.
Right.
Right. So certainly bigger than mobile.
And finally, in the news, because we got to move on here. OpenAI, started talking about model distillation. Can you explain what model distillation is?
So I think this is, I was not familiar with that concept until they announced it on Dev Day. But really, it's around taking a small model, like a 4.0 mini, for example, a GPT 4.0 mini, and training it using a larger model, like a GPT-4, for example. So the idea of that is really you're training the smaller model on some maybe say domain specificity or some specific tasks you want it to do, right? And use the data from the larger LLM to train this model. And in the process, your photo token costs, etc., are going to be lower. And there's some domain specificity. So because not all tasks that you throw at the LLM needs a large model. So that's
I actually teach a class on ChatGPT using to write PowerShell, right? And it's really interesting to do development using ChatGPT and just how good it is at writing code. Like we had to write a hypervisor, right? But what you quickly realize when you're buying tokens, talking about this $5 billion revenue that they get from users and everything, is that models make a difference, right? The small models, the pricing on the small models are like 0.00001 cent. The on the full 4.0 model is like 0.01 cent.
Yes.
And so financially, when I'm writing APIs and doing that gets expensive.
It gets pretty expensive. I was actually, someone on my team circulated pricing costs around, the different models, and I don't know the index, the units that they use, but the largest model or the latest model was like 42 cents a unit, whatever that unit that was used.
Wow,
$42 actually. So it's crazy, like I mean, so obviously ChatGPT is interesting from a revenue standpoint. Obviously, it's the latest models with reasoning capabilities, etc. They price it, very high, and of course the cost keeps coming down just logarithmically, I guess, right, over time. So
the other thing is the footprint of the model itself, right? Like if you're on the edge, or if you're trying to deploy this in a little robot, or doing something that's Raspberry Pi 5 or whatever, then the size of the model matters.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I mean that's a very interesting topic. Like I mean, models, LLM models being deployed on the edge and compute, or the LLM output being taken both from the edge and the source. So that's going to be an interesting trend that we're going to see over time, where these models are going to be hosted on mobile devices.
Right. So, good opening news segment. 10 minutes in already. They go by fast, but just a lot of news this week, and this is just all that happened. This was announced this week, so lots of news going on there. Let's talk a little bit about the fun stuff, right? The interesting topics, right? The one that I kind of got hooked on this week, and I got demos for. Shout out to John Furrier from theCUBE, right? If you guys know him, great podcaster. He does podcasts at the Wall Street Journal, but he came over. No, not at Wall Street Journal. He does podcasts in New York on the trading floor on the NYSE. So, and he does interviews of guys that are coming to get funded around AI. And one of the things he turned me on is the Notebook LM from Google. And if you really look at what it's doing, and because we run podcasts and I'm a podcaster, right? They got an AI, you feed it slides, you feed it your corporate slides, whatever topic you want, and it basically builds like what we're doing right now, a 2 AI. They got a female voice, a male voice, and a female voice, and they go through and it builds a script from your slides and gives you a complete podcast, 30-minute, 40-minute, whatever the slide depth is around the podcast. And it is really, really, interesting to see that technology. And I couldn't believe it when I was actually looking at it. This is what I'm talking about. When this stuff starts hitting the market, right? And we'll talk about PipeIQ too. And you see it, I literally stopped John and said, like, this can't be. That was not generated. Because the voices were beautiful, they were slick, they added inflection, they told jokes along the way, and not only that, but I think there was more than just what was in the slides. Like, what? Do you know anything about that?
I think Notebook LM, the demos have been going around. It's amazing, actually, right? But I think this is just the thing about AI is every week there's some sort of staggering, interesting demo that comes out and just like blows your mind, honestly. Like, right? And this is the velocity and speed at which AI is moving is pretty amazing. So, but I think the Notebook LM example, what is interesting is, I think Google has an edge over ChatGPT in one respect, which is around search, right? So I think Gemini and other models that they have an inherent capacity, not inherent, but have this strong capacity to go out and search and bring additional data. So if this slide deck was about a particular company, you can go grab extra data, and then feed that in. And I think the more interesting part is just on the emotion, being able to replicate things. That like a deck will never have, right? Like sentiment and emotion. Now they're able to inject that, right? I mean, that's amazing, honestly. So I think we are just the start, honestly, right? I think we'll probably see more and more of these kind of innovations coming along.
Now, the thing that struck me about it is that I listened to the whole show that this thing that created, and it was like a 35-minute show, but there were sections of it that it certainly went out, use search, got more information about the topic, and then weave that into the narrative. But some of it was kind of negative news, right, for the topic, right, or things that you wouldn't necessarily want to be in your content. And the thing that I'm looking at is like, how do you control that content? How do you actually know what you're getting? And so I'm like thinking, well, maybe this is kind of still a toy because if it's 80% good but 20% not good, my PR department's going to be like, no, you can't put that out, right? You can't trust that. So like, how do you manage the trust workflow? Like, a lot of the publishing tools that I use in social media communities is it's about, having, approval steps, right? And we got workflow for content. And I look at when an AI is generating this stuff, like, how do you control what it's actually going to find out on the web and weave that into, a creative offering?
Right. No, I think this whole challenge I think can freak out, literally can freak out enterprise teams or including PR folks, right? Just the output that a LLM or AI model is going to generate, right? If I were to use it without human in the loop, there's this risk that with the sort of creativity, right? What is it going to put in there? You just have no idea, right? So I think putting guardrails around this is going to be an industry in and of itself, actually, right? And I think there's a role here for some sophisticated what should I say, sampling that can be done of the output, right? And then presenting that in front of the human to approve or deny and so on, right? Or modify. So I think this is definitely a challenge, right? I mean, and hallucination is part of it, right? Like spinning up things that's not in there at all, or maybe it's talking about competitors, right? Like stuff that's valid, but show the company in a poor light. Yeah.
And what was interesting when I was talking to Mr. Furrier about this, he was excited about using this with his sales team, right? He's been begging his sales team to go to the market and explain what they do, what his company does. And he was like, Eric, the best thing about this is I've been trying to get my salespeople to run this pitch. Now I'm just going to have it build the pitch, and the salesperson's going to sit and hit play, right? Because this pitch was twice as good as any of what his salespeople could generate to go out to customers. So I guess I see this, and although it's not perfect, neither are salespeople, right? Salespeople make mistakes and say the wrong things, or lead a customer in a direction that might not be perfect. So maybe only 80% of what a salesperson would say was going to be perfect anyway. And so where is that threshold where, kind of like self-driving cars, right? Yeah. Well, they do wreck every once in a while, but if you look at the numbers, they're way more efficient than what an average driver is. So yes, there is some percentage of wrongness that happens, but they're better than the human, right? And so there is that. And I got to say, that leads me to my next topic, which is AI going to be replacing sales and marketing functions, right? As that capability shows up, like video production, podcast production, analyst report production, it's this is what's happening.
Yeah. No, I think look, I mean, the fact of the matter is these AI models seem to be extremely powerful, right? And it's our job as humans with creative capacities to be able to leverage them effectively, right? I think with every technological revolution, there's always this thing about upskilling of jobs, changing. I mean, take it with manufacturing, with mobile, with internet, etc. We always see this trend. So I think with sales and marketing automation, definitely, I think AI is going to play a significant part, especially in areas where humans are really doing things that a machine or an AI can do very easily, right? So content generation is one that's already been exposed or explored in a fair depth, right? Companies like Jasper and Copy and so on, right? They have already for the last 3-4 years looked at that sector and helped generate a ton of content, including ChatGPT, obviously, right? So I think content generation is definitely one area. I think that's already ripe for disruption. I think what we're going to see now with Strawberry and GPT-5 and so on, I think is the whole reasoning element. I think there's going to be a lot of chatter for the next 6 to 12 months around agents. And what, in my opinion, or the way I think about these agents are really reasoning capabilities, right? So the moment you have reasoning capability, now you can work through multiple tasks and chain them and think through how to kind of go about doing a certain project, if you will, right? Which is a set of tasks, right? So I think is there a chance that some sales and marketing roles or tasks are going to be done by AI? Absolutely. I think it will happen, right? Now, what are those things? I think we can also have some reasonable hypotheses around what those are. And I think as sales and marketing professionals, we definitely should be, learn how to use these AI tools. I think that's the key point.
That is the key point. I agree with that. That's what Mr. Fourier came back to me and said as well as that, hey, this just makes everybody more efficient, right, and more effective, right? Yeah. And then a friend of mine who helps me with ChatGPT, PowerShell Labs, code generating, is that you're going to have more code. You're going to have more applications. You're going to have quicker applications to market. You're going to see an explosion, much like the internet and Amazon and sales, help delivery of products to everybody. You're going to actually see more code. You're going to actually see more sales activity. You're just going to see more economic activity in general because it's just gotten easier and faster. And I can't say that anybody wouldn't want more salespeople, right? Or have your salespeople to be more effective and more efficient, right? And so that's kind of where it goes, so that you get more sales. So I think that's interesting. If we take a look at now marketing automation tools, right? There's a lot of tools. I know that I've talked to big enterprise customers, and they're talking thousands and thousands of tools that they're running in their data center. Like, how big is the tool market for marketing automation?
I mean, if you take marketing and sales automation together, like look at Scott Brinker's report, like 10,000 tools, right? Like 8 or 10,000. This is a massive number, right? We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, a lot of room for disruption, right?
Absolutely.
And now everybody, we talked about the land grab. Everybody's going back trying to build automation or build AI. Sorry, not automation. Build AI into those automation tools, right? I got to imagine there's going to be some winners. There's going to be some losers, right? And then there's going to be new companies that come in and try to actually, make this happen, right? So I guess the question, are we going to see consolidation? Are we going to see growth? Like, how many winners, how many losers, how many new tools?
I think, look, I mean, every incumbent player, of course, is going to fit in AI capability, or attempt to. I think, as with every, again, new, tech wave, the challenge is that whatever has been built from an incumbent legacy standpoint may not be the most appropriate for this new AI wave, right? So retrofitting works, but it will only work till a point, right? And I think in my opinion, the big paradigm shift here is that in our current systems, the human is giving instruction to the machine, and the machine goes off and does whatever it needs to, right? But I think with AI, with agentic systems, one agent is going to give an instruction to another agent, and so on, right? It's a chaining of different agents, or hierarchy of agents. So in that paradigm, your point and click interface may be totally inappropriate for that and not work. So that's kind of a big change in my opinion. So newer players certainly have a leg up in that respect. They don't have the legacy software, they don't have the legacy point and click and so on. So they can build AI native systems from the ground up and have a better shot potentially. But of course, the incumbents have the cash flow, they have the customers, right? So we'll have to see, where this goes. But
well, when we talk about, tool consolidation, and then we also talk about new tools and enabling what we call greenfield apps, right? We have brownfield where they're already there and they build AI into it. Then you have greenfield, which is just new capabilities. I guess I would put PipeIQ in the greenfield space, right? Where
that's right.
You're inventing new capabilities for your sales and marketing automation, right? So I guess we could transition now into like a little bit about what PipeIQ is, and so maybe you could just give us like a little history of PipeIQ. What problem is out there that you're trying to adjust, and what are you guys actually building?
Happy to. So look, I think when I started PipeIQ a few months ago, the idea was that again, AI native LLMs offer new capabilities, right? And current systems don't take advantage of it. What is the best way to now bring that into the sales and marketing space? That was kind of the basic question that we were trying to answer. And there's a boatload of different sectors, jobs, right, where again, some are more ripe for disruption than others in sales and marketing, right? In go-to-market overall. And we took the position that, hey, one of the kind of potential areas is around SDRs, sales development reps, or BDRs, what are called, right? And I think that is one swim lane where these SDRs are on the phone, doing 75 to 100 calls a day, sending out hundreds of emails, and so on and so forth, right? To get a few meetings a month, right? So, and there's very high churn. These teams are losing, like, I don't know, they're at 25-30% churn year on year, right? And the NPS or just like the level of stress they face is pretty high. So that is one swim lane, I think, that definitely gains steam, and has already seen a bunch of automation and RevOps teams and sales and marketing teams, right? Kind of coming in and leveraging some of these capabilities. So we decided to focus on that area, which is, hey, how can we accelerate pipeline? What are some of the creative AI strategies we can use? And that's the problem we've been focusing on.
Nice. So you say months, but I think you've been at it for a little more than a month. I would call it a couple of years. Invested in the space. You're one of the early innovators, right?
We were definitely. Yes. When we started, we were at a different area.
Right.
Particular problem.
It's been hot, and you've been just riding the wave, right? So. So that's interesting. Do you approach this from a SaaS perspective? Like, how do you go to market with this?
Yes, we do approach it from a SaaS perspective. So, right, we have a SaaS tool, right, and the kind of pricing and is all sort of something that's been framed as we speak here, right? Like folks like Intercom or even Salesforce, especially in the customer success, customer support space, they are looking at based on number of tickets resolved or conversations resolved, etc. So I think we are seeing a shift in how pricing is going to be done, because with AI, the better you do your job as an AI agent, the lesser the number of people potentially you'll need. So a per seat pricing, I think, is under revision, if you will.
It's an interesting concept that you guys have, because I know I've talked to you, and how I got exposed to you guys is that I was interested in. I run big communities, right? So I'm a community guy, and I'm a social media guy, and I'm a podcaster guy, and we talked to you about like being able to start replacing some of the community function, right, with AI, right? Because AI can do that, right? And monitoring what's actually happening, and then connecting. And so this gets to the point where you have to actually have connectors, right? You have to actually get the data in to build the model, right? And we were looking at a connector to Chorus, our community platform, to be able to then harvest what the community people are doing. And community has a response time, right? Like one of our challenges is when a community, sometimes it takes 2 days for a community post in a forum to get answered, right? And 2 days when you're running an IT shop, that's 2 days you're waiting for an answer somehow. So what you do after 4 hours, you call your customer support rep, right? And you file a ticket and you wait. So the community lets that person down, and it costs the company money because of the delay. Well, if you have AI that can harvest, and a lot of times in the community platform, there already are those answers, right? It's just digging them out of a repository of like 20 million database entries, right? To be able to go get that and then present that to a user in a timely manner. And I think that's what your engine, you have connectors. And so why don't we talk a little bit about that?
I think data is central to whatever. I mean, for LLMs, right? Without data, you can't do much. I think that's obvious for everybody, right? Like ChatGPT wouldn't be as powerful as it is if it's not trained on all the data that's there on the internet, right? So for enterprises, this becomes like an interesting problem, and this is something that we always sort of had front and center for us, right? The structured data, the unstructured data, both within the enterprise, right? So I think piping that data in, that's the context around which the responses, whatever your AI model is doing, right, is able to do it effectively. So retrieval augmentation generation as a technique, RAG, what they call, right, wouldn't be possible without all this context. So I think effective connectors into different systems that are already there in the enterprise, especially when we talk about 8 or 10,000 systems, market systems, or sales systems that are there, right? You better figure out a proper proper strategy to bring all that data in. And also, I mean, the way you think about unstructured data is going to be different from the way you think about structured data. So with structured data, the challenge is that you need precise answers. You need, if you say, hey, tell me the number of opportunities that we have had with IBM, right, or Cisco, and so on. You need to come up with a precise number, right? And LLMs, I think, currently, right, your chances of getting things right with unstructured data is a little bit better than with structured data. So those are some considerations that you have to think with when you build these systems. But nevertheless, right, all of that data, if you are thinking about AI or running AI projects within an enterprise, I mean, one of the big things that you need to be thinking about is how do we get all this data in an effective fashion, right, into our AI infrastructure. Now that AI infrastructure itself is going to have, right, like a hyperscaler layer, it's going to have an LLM, some middleware, and then you have the applications, which is where PipeIQ sits in the application layer. But you have to have a coherent strategy on how you're approaching all of this sort of data capture, and then normalizing it, and then how are we going to vectorize it, and so on and so forth. So to kind of get the effective output that you need, an accurate output, right? I think is also an important one. So in terms of prioritizing your AI projects or which ones have a higher chance of success, I think is also something that needs to be evaluated and thought through.
So let's, I think you've demonstrated here when we're talking about PipeIQ that there's a lot of technology that goes into making this happen, right? So let's pop the stack a little bit, come very high level and say, what is this? If I'm a potential customer, right, and I'm thinking I want to, do sales automation, right? Can you do like the high level elevator pitch of what am I going to get?
Yes. I think as a marketer and sales guy, I've always been frustrated with the amount of data engineering that you have to do to get the output that you need. Right? Over the last 10-15 years, there's been a lot of traction on marketing automation. But if you look at any sort of data flows, right, you go to a typical salesperson would have to go to LinkedIn or Sales Navigator to find some company or the people who work in that company and what's the hierarchy.
So I'm going to go even higher level because I know you live in this space. So I'm going to go if you're listening to this for the first time, right, you do sales automation where you're going to look for leads through a bunch of data, right? Like so you talk about how you get the data, what is it, but you're actually then going to help the salesperson find leads.
Yes. So
you guys do.
I think revenue acceleration, I would say.
Okay.
Right? Revenue lift and acceleration.
So you're going to optimize a salesperson to get more revenue from his 8-hour day, right?
That's right.
By finding and interacting with potential customers that you're pulling from all these connectors.
That's right. Exactly. And those connectors are not only internal connectors to your enterprise data, but also external connectors, right? That your internal system will not have right now. So in a way, you have your TAM, total addressable market, and then you have, what you're getting out of that. Now we help you tap into more of your TAM as well, right? In addition to what you may already have in terms of your database.
Right, because in a sales world, it's all about connections, right? If I talk to a salesperson, right, it's like when I bring on a sales guy, I'm like, how many connections do you have? How many people do you engage with that want our products, right? And so that makes an effective salesperson, right? Is that he just has a huge Rolodex in the old days. Now he has a big, iPhone collection of the people, and then he's in those conversations, right? And we talk about social selling, and we talk about, making sure you're in a social situation where you're talking to them on LinkedIn, you're harvesting, you're letting them know what your valuable services are. But what you guys are doing is saying, hey, we can automate that through AI, right? We can then harvest that, and because we're in all of these different data streams, we could do 10x what a normal salesperson would ever be able to do.
Absolutely. I think from a productivity improvement standpoint, it's probably orders of magnitude, right? 5x, 10x, 20x in terms of time savings, right? What if a particular outreach to a salesperson, to a prospect is going to take you 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? it'll crunch it to 30 seconds or a minute, right? So with human in the loop on what we're doing with AI. So there's massive productivity gains. Now what that implies is with that productivity gain, obviously now you can go talk to more prospects. Also there's, I mean, we can again talk about unpeel or peel the onion in terms of the stack itself on prospect outreach and what does it take, right, to even get a meeting with a prospect, right? Somebody that doesn't know about your brand, and then hey, you bring them into the funnel. Maybe they get to know you. Then what happens? They come to your website, they check it out. Okay, how do you engage with them, right? And how does that tie into
It's interesting too, because I've done a lot of work with Salesforce, right? And Salesforce kind of had a lot of the knowledge coming into their systems because Salesforce does that. But then they gave you a spot that then you almost had to have data analysts sit, and I'd have to hire a team of 10 people to try to figure out what actually was being said by the customer, and then how to get that into the right account feed, right? And like the prioritization of it. And so it became something that I think we spent, $250,000, $300,000 over 2 years on a Salesforce plugin that allowed us to get the data, from social feeds, right? And then, try to get that into the account management. We failed just because the amount of work that's required to parse all that and figure out how to make that work was. And I feel like now you guys are trying to get a handle on that so that you could actually implement something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the beauty. I mean, the example you stated is so relevant and pertinent. I think today's with LLMs, right? You can actually ingest that data, right? And you do have to point the LLM to go in the right direction. I mean, again, the whole reasoning aspect, right? Like without that, the LLM wouldn't know where to look. But if you point it in the right direction, it can absolutely go and get you the right answers. Because otherwise, in the stuff that you did, that project that did, I mean, like. You got to go into a notes field, or maybe there's some other obscure field in Salesforce that you go grab that data, bring it in, and then catalog it. Yeah, exactly. All of that now I think is capable of being automated. But you do need subject matter experts to understand what these flows are, where this data is sitting, how do we bring it in? Once we bring it in, what kind of fine tuning do we need to do? Is it prompting, right? And how do we validate that data that you are getting the output is accurate, is not hallucinating, right? And serves the business needs. So again, there's I think multiple steps, and we definitely have been doing a lot of work around that. So the automation piece specifically, right? So in terms of giving a revenue lift, our thesis is that a lot of these conversations with prospects are potentially going to be automated, and it's not just about blindly using AI. Again, I mean, I think there's people are already getting a little jaded potentially by just, hey, if an AI is reaching out to you, what's the benefit? Of course, right? How do we blend the human and the machine, right? Like creating the right kind of marriage between these two elements. I think the key thing that we are.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about workflow automation and controlled AI response, right? Like, 'cause I want to ask you that. Like, at one point we talked about your products that I was looking at being a customer, and one of the big challenges is where is that workflow that says this is okay to send to a customer. This is not okay to send to a customer. How are you creating a dashboard so a salesperson comes in and then interacts with the data? Do you have a mode that actually will engage with the customer without any kind of workflow control? How do you manage that?
So within the workflow, right? Even though we reduce your outreach time from 20 minutes to 30 seconds, the key point here is human in the loop, right? Like so in the workflow, there's always an opportunity for you to say, hey, I want to see the output that is going to go to the prospect, and you always have that option. You always have the opportunity to say yes, no, modify it, and so on, right? And give feedback to the AI system, right? So that it learns from your feedback. So I think that's a very important part of this workflow orchestration. Now, what we also, I think, are going to see as we go along is that systems that then run on autopilot, which is kind of the holy grail, so to speak, right, where things can run on their own. But I think we are a little bit we are not there yet. Not just PipeIQ as a company, but overall the industry, I think, right? Because definitely there's healthy skepticism around, hey, what are these models producing, and how do we make sure that it doesn't piss off a customer or prospect and so on. So the approach we have taken is basically to say we have tuned our models in such a way that it follows some very tight guardrails. So you reduce the creativity of the LLM, right? The temperature, so to speak, which is the setting that's available. But so you reduce the creativity of it, and therefore you increase the reliability of the response. So there's a dance there, and again, it's liable to be feedback from the user, from the salesperson, on whether they think this is a good email or a good LinkedIn message, right? Or even a voicemail, right? For that matter, right? Like so, so you definitely take that into consideration as you go.
Yeah, interesting. So changing subjects, I know, because we've been going for like almost 40 minutes now. I just got, and we want to get to some of the questions I like to talk about when we're talking about new technology. Is like, how would I go about it? If I'm listening to this and I'm like, hey, I want to, you know, I've got my salespeople to maybe take advantage of this. Maybe this is a tool that'll optimize me, my sales team by 20%. What's the best way to engage with you guys? Do you guys do POCs, or like, you know, do you give trials out there? What's a imagine if you're looking at your sales team, there's got to be an engagement, right? Because it's not like here's a tool and go have fun, right? There's got to be some
absolutely. I mean, with large companies, with enterprises, we are doing POCs, right? So I think that's the right mode of engagement, right, for an enterprise. If you're an SMB or a mid-market player, we do have free trials, right? But the free trials have to be structured also in a fashion where it takes about a 4 or 6 week ramp period in terms of seeing results. So we don't want you to run a 2-week trial and not getting results, and it won't make any sense. So we are hesitant to do a POC motion at this point, right? But yeah, come talk to us, and we'll figure out a model where which works well for you, right? And we'll show results, right? And which can then convert to a longer term engagement.
So I assume this is PipeIQ.ai.
So PipeIQ.ai is our website, and you can hit me up on LinkedIn.
And we spell that PipeIQ?
That's right, PipeIQ. PipeIQ.ai, right? So, I mean, it's B2B pipeline. That's where the word pipe comes from. Yeah.
So I got to also assume that because you're probably watching this podcast, you probably either saw PipeIQ's LinkedIn page or Rajesh's LinkedIn page, because I think we're going to upload this podcast over there too, right? So you should be able to find.
Please, I think LinkedIn is a pretty effective way. I mean, our website. I mean, we don't have a ton of forms or something, but there's a contact page. You can obviously reach out there as well. My email address is rajesh@pipeiq.ai. So feel free to shoot me an email.
Yeah, now you're going to have 15,000 emails in your mailbox. So you're going to wish you hadn't done that. Right? You're going to be changing your email address. So that's kind of cool, right? Like, I think it's another one of these instances where when you look at what the AI tool will do, I'm kind of like, wow, that's just incredible, right? Like, when you actually look at it, and I think that every aspect of business is going to be touched. When people ask me, the hype around AI, right? And I'm like, I was a skeptic for probably the first year, right? Where I'm like, that's just another one of these, Silicon Valley, let's talk ourselves into what's something good. But then when you actually see it, like I saw the podcast thing with Notebook LM, right? Like I'm just like, and when I'm writing code now and I'm building a hypervisor using ChatGPT, I just told ChatGPT, build me a hypervisor with Raspberry Pi 4, right? And well, there was a professor that does it for his grad classes, right? And so of course the LLM had picked that up, and they gave me how to build it, the assembler for it, the bootloader, like everything, like so you realize that these AI engines are smart. And then if I look at John Furrier and his ability to build a financial analyst kind of podcast that talked about his quarter results, and it was better than some of the financial calls I've been on listening to companies report their results. I would have not known that it wasn't real people having a conversation about their financial results, and it weaved in a lot of other smart things that he didn't have. When you watch this stuff and you realize that this is going to actually this is going to change the effectiveness of everybody. And the quicker we get here, now nobody writes code anymore. Right? Like I'm talking to my software engineers, nobody writes code code, everybody uses, some kind of coding engine, whether it's Microsoft, I forget Copilot, right? Or whether it's ChatGPT or any other, any of the major ones that are out there. You're just like, okay, this is how it's going to go. And it's partly just getting the word out, right? Letting people know that these tools like PipeIQ are actually out there, and you need to be, you need to be doing that. And then I always look at greenfield versus brownfield. And like, really, I like the greenfield solutions, right? Like, I like ones, you can always take a pickup truck and try to make it into a Tesla pickup truck or something, but it's not, you're better off just buying something that's engineered for the project, and yes, there's going to be industry consolidation in sales automation tools, right? But then, web apps and, that kind of stuff is, and there's a lot of technology. It's not easy. It's super hard, just listening to you, like for a lot of our listeners are probably, it's probably over their head.
It is.
There's a ton of technology.
Getting output from LLMs is also not super easy. The thing is, just coding as an example, you can get into write code, but it's all about the context, right? So I think today, the new skill in software engineering is going to be ability to evaluate the code that
Right.
LLM is throwing you out, right? So you don't have to write test code. Is this code correct? Is it pulling the right functions? Is it hallucinating, etc. Right? So I think the more context it has, the better a job it is.
And is it figured out something that you really don't want it to do? that 20%, right? And how do you have workflow control on that?
That's right. I mean, I think there's definitely some questions around as these things get smarter and closer to AGI. I'm sure. Things that we think about. Yeah.
Okay, so the last bit of the show that we'll like to do is what keeps you up at night? From an AI perspective, do you have problems or challenges which you don't really have a solution for? Which is typical in Silicon Valley. We don't get paid for things that are easy, right? We get paid for things that are incredibly hard. So, what do you think the big challenges are around this space?
So I think for me as a founder, running an AI startup, really, there's tremendous amount of development, happening every day, right? So, one thing is, how do I not get blindsided, right?
The pace of
everything is massive, actually, right? People are building lots of different things, especially in the application stack, right? So one thing, I mean, this doesn't keep me up at night, so to speak, but I enjoy it.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge, which is, okay, how do I react to something new that I see, right? And it's going to affect my business, and what is allowed, right? From a even regulation standpoint, there's going to be a lot of regulations that we have to prepare for just around AI, right? And so that's another area to think about. So for me, it's just about keeping up with the developments, right? And making sure that we leverage it effectively. I mean, that's one thing, right? The second thing is just talent, right? I mean, there's a huge demand for. Good talent is hard to find as always, right? And especially with AI now, it's even more so, right? I mean, the best engineers know how to leverage these tools, right? I mean, just spoke about coding. So I mean, if you are not leveraging these things effectively, your productivity is probably half or 25% of what somebody else who's actually leveraging these AI tools. So, right? I mean, what kind of person do I have on my team, or do I want to have on my team? Is also something that's continual on my mind, because a lot of this is actually a war for talent as well.
Right. That sounds like it's a challenge and might keep me up at night as well. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's all about speed.
On the yin and yang of that, like what excites you? What are you looking forward over the next year?
I'm excited about what AI is throwing at us, honestly. The yin and yang of it is crazy speed of development, right? I keep up, but the flip side is I just know that by just staying in the game, right, you're going in the right direction. I think
there is a lot of money floating around too. Like a buddy of mine just got something funded for $100 million, right? And it's so there is just a lot of money being spent to accomplish this. And after I've seen the results, and if you're listening to this podcast, this is Silicon Valley. This is this stuff is moving, and the results are phenomenal, right? And so it's not going away. It's going to change everybody's job over time. People keep asking me, what's the newest tech? And I'm like, it sounds a cliche, but the truth is It's how AI is changing everything. And I got to say, I've had projects that I've tried to write code that I couldn't make work. Right. You know, and you get a ChatGPT now. You just the 4.0 model comes out, and you just ask it to write. And we're not talking about just like write me. You know, no, we're talking like build me some assembler, build me some C, build me a web interface, build a GUI. Right. I mean, I'm gonna probably ask it next week. Hey, build me a PipeIQ app. Right? This is gonna go build it.
That's probably
because like it is, and I tell people like. The AI is almost like Albert Einstein's smartness, right? It's like a person. You got to look at it as like a super. You just hired the smartest person in the world, and then multiply the intelligence by 10x. Yes. That's who you have working for you. Yes. And it's just a little prompt, but it's the engine behind it is smarter than any human we've ever crafted.
It's extremely smart, and the way to take it to the next level is by providing context. The moment it has context is when it's like the productivity, for you from the LLM just like goes up, right? So. Yeah.
Well, I know we're coming up to the top of the hour, and thanks for everybody that's listening, and you made it to the end, so I appreciate that. Next week, episode 2, we will be doing a deep dive on workflow automation to control AI responses. So we're going to get into this some technology, right? You can talk about some of that. Maybe we'll bring an engineer on and have him talk a little bit about the challenges around doing some of this, because it is fun to, get into the guts. And if you're listening to the podcast and you want to know about the industry of AI, and we're in Silicon Valley between Google and Facebook and Apple and everybody that's here, we got everybody around, we got great people. We'll do an episode every week or so, and hopefully you can come back, subscribe, subscribe to Rajesh's LinkedIn page so that you can see when the new episodes are coming out, and we'll see you again next week. Rajesh, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you so much. This is awesome. Really enjoyed it.
All right, we'll see everybody next week.
Bye, guys. See you.